Thanks again for taking some time to chat with me.
Thanks so much for having me, Lance.
Yeah. So, just kind of going over your background and things like that. You've worked with like a ton of actors, name actors, Michelle Williams, Kerry Washington, some guy named Brad Pitt. I'm not sure, Bradley Cooper, who I just saw his movie last night, Maestro. Holy crap, he was outstanding. The film was great, but he was fantastic.
These are journeyman actors, which is not an easy thing to do, as you know, because to sustain a career, you have to be more than a flash in the pan. You have to have craft.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, and I was really happy that, not that I thought it would, but that his previous film, I'm blanking on the name, wasn't a fluke. His directing abilities there wasn't a fluke, and it was just so wonderful. I left the theater like, oh, it was great. Him and Carey Mulligan was perfect too.
Good.
So did you work with them before they became, I guess, well known, or are you still working with them as?
Yeah, a lot of people have gone on the entire journey. Austin Butler, who played Elvis, is one of those who started in technique, and then he would be in scene study class constantly in between acting gigs. And then he wanted to do a play, and he pushed his agents, and he got an audition for Iceman Cometh opposite Denzel Washington, worked on that, and then that put him in a different league because only a real actor can do theater. And Iceman Cometh, no less, they did the short version, which was 4 hours long. So for a lot of people, they're with me for a long period of time or keep coming back for refreshers periodically.
So you have like some sort of Howard Fine bat signal whenever they need you. You come get in your car and come running.
The 911.
Yeah.
Because I don't go to set. I never did. Now it's really unnecessary because you can coach online wherever anyone is in the world. But I don't go to set because I feel the acting coaches who do that are encouraging neurotic dependency. And I try not to do that.
Yeah. That's, I would have never thought about that. But yeah, I've heard like where actors have their coaches or whatever on set. And I would feel like it would just, how do I say the word the, or what am I doing here? It's just things like that,
It's kryptonite to the actor because then they can't think for themselves. And the coach has created sometimes that dynamic so that the actor will be dependent on them.
Yeah.
Which is the last thing you want to do.
Out of all those people and all the other, sort of well-known people you've coached and trained, is there one trait in all of them that you've noticed that helped them get to where they are today?
Yes, insecurity.
Oh, wow. I would not have guessed that answer.
Yeah, when I was traveling once and I heard a child psychologist interviewed, so I didn't get her name, but she was asked, what do children need in order to succeed later in life? And she said insecurity, which makes them work harder, balanced by a feeling of being special. You need both. But if you don't have insecurity, you already think you've won the race. And so most people think insecurity is the disqualifying trait. It's not. It's the enabling trait. You must have it. It must be balanced by a feeling of being special, because too much insecurity and you can't get out of bed, and too much feeling special and you don't do your work. So there's balance, but insecurity is the most common trait. No truly talented person. I'll give you an example without saying who this is. This is an award-winning actor. We were coaching recently, and when I coach, I read the dialogue opposite the actor. And the line that I had, my character that I'm reading, said, "I don't believe a word you're saying." So I read the scene and the actor stops and says, "You don't? It wasn't good?" And that's how vulnerable everybody is.
That's amazing. I would have in a million years never guessed that, but yeah, it's very true. It just it makes them work harder.
Correct.
Yeah.
When you watch the singing shows and they interview people in advance and someone says, "I'm the next Whitney, I'm the next Mariah," you already know they can't sing.
Right.
And someone else is humble and, oh my goodness. Two Cornell psychologists named Dunning and Kruger did a study. The people who had done the best on the tests underrated themselves, and the people who had done poorly thought they had done great. And so now it's called the Dunning-Kruger effect. Clueless people have no clue. They think they're great.
Right. Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. I'm going to take that with me. Yeah, that's great. So, when you worked with, as an example, like Austin Butler, you worked with him on Elvis.
Yes.
So,
From the audition even, and the audition for Elvis, Lance. Sorry to interrupt.
No, no.
The audition for Elvis was Tennessee Williams' Orpheus Descending. And why did Baz Luhrmann ask for that? Because a non-actor can't do it. You have to have craft to do that.
And when he auditioned, was he like in Elvis mode, like with the voice, and had he gotten that down yet?
No, not yet. That took time after studying Elvis. He went to Graceland. He did a lot of homework, and the two of us had a timeline of Elvis's life. So even scenes that were not in the movie, we knew what had happened in his life in between. And then we worked scene by scene. That movie, coaching that, saved my life, because my sanity. When the pandemic hit, he was already filming, and Tom Hanks got COVID and filming stopped. Well, my studio closed. I had absolutely nothing to do. I was losing my mind. And Austin had nothing to do. So during that time, almost every day online, we worked on Elvis. So that saved my sanity during the pandemic.
Oh my gosh, that's just, yeah. I was going crazy too. I think all of us were, but yeah, you got a lucky break on that one.
Well, also, I think, just as a message to all the listeners, when the pandemic hit and we closed the studio, I thought we were going to go out of business. I thought that was the end. And Becky Clow and Ian Cardone, the two people who work with me. Ian just recently, by the way, booked Rick and Morty. He's the new Rick.
Oh, wow.
Ian was our administrator. Anyway, they picked me up off the floor and said, we're going to go online. How are we going to do that? Well, we figured it out. And now we are worldwide online as well as in person. So in the darkest moment, you don't know what's around the corner. And I can't say, oh, I believed, I knew. No, I didn't know. I thought we were done. So things are better now than they ever were. Now the new book, and it's a good time.
I've got some questions about the online classes in the book in a second, but I wanted to get back to one thing. When you and Austin started working together, what are you guys focusing on? Like, do you have like a set of guidelines to get from point A, right, when you start to point Z, and you always follow those? Or
yes,
yeah,
no. Well, it ends up, you have to deal with the unique demands of the material as well. But I have what's called my 8 steps, which is a whole process from A to Z. But the biggest trap with Elvis, which I was painfully aware of at every moment, if he had done an imitation of Elvis, it would have been career ending rather than award winning. Might as well sign up for a job in Vegas. And so the entire process was finding where Elvis connects and lives inside Austin. And that's almost my entire training. What in the human condition is this about? Where does it live inside me, the artist?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm just kind of thinking that in my head, like, oh yeah, and thinking about all the things I could have done better in previous positions and roles. It's like, damn.
Once I get inside your head, I'm not moving out, Lance. I'm going to be in there.
It's like, where were you 2 years ago? So going to what do you think? When I first heard about like Zoom classes and things like that, and I was like, how's that going to work? That's kind of weird. And now I'm doing one myself, and I love it because, obviously we have 2 kids, and it's just hard for me to fight traffic and do things and come home late at night, so what were your thoughts on it prior? And now that you guys are doing it, what are your thoughts now?
Sure. First of all, I didn't even know what Zoom was prior to the pandemic. Scene study cannot be taught online. There are people who try to do that. That has to be taught in person. However, technique And certainly self-tape audition technique is the best on Zoom. I would never want to teach an audition class in person where people are looking at a little monitor. We can play the tape for everybody in class easily to see and analyze it, and it's powerful. So it has adapted very well. And there are people all over the country and all over the world who are now in class at the same time. And they're a community. They get to know each other and bond. All the same things happen that happen in an in-person class. The one thing that I do not believe can be taught online is scene study.
Now, why is that?
Because you need the physical life of a scene. And you'd have to have a camera following people, entering the room, exiting, physical behavior. In in-person classes, I emphasize the importance of physical reality. We don't just learn how to say a line intelligently. So much is communicated through behavior. And through behavior, that can only happen with the props, all of which you can't do online.
With your book, you just updated it. So what is in the new version of it that would want to make me pick it up? That
Yeah.
not I didn't have it before, but
I revised the book for a number of reasons. One is self-tapes didn't even exist as an audition form when I wrote the book 15 years ago. So there's a whole thing on self-tapes, from the technical aspects to the interpretive aspects. But I've also, since I've been teaching online, come to realize how much garbage backstory there is that actors are doing. Because actors are forever being taught, you got to stand out, you got to make strong choices. And the actor thinks they have to think of something clever to stand out. And
yeah.
it leads to bad acting. And so, so let me give you an example. In the online technique class, I give a self-tape. First scene, it's reporter reporting on the details of a murder. I thought, oh, this is very straightforward, and it would be a good place to start and teach people, okay, what station do you work for? What courthouse are you at? Do you think the kids who are being charged did it? In any case, so tape comes on. This guy's crying his eyes out, giving the report. When it was over, I said, what are you doing? It was my sister who was murdered. No, it wasn't your sister who was murdered. You're the reporter. Another one, the anchor asks a follow-up question. What exactly does the magistrate have to hold these two men overnight? And the reporter answers, that's a good question, Larry. And then explains. One person says, that's a good question, Larry. What were you doing? Larry tried to rape me. No, Larry did not try to rape you. But this is the type of thing that actors start to insert, trying to stand out. So I clarified backstory and how to do it correctly so that you don't get off track and add things that the writer did not intend. But we're seeing that all the time. There's so much crazy thinking out there and crazy teaching. I have heard, again, since I've been teaching online, the craziest notes that actors have gotten. One is they've been told, you blink too much. Blinking is involuntary. If someone starts thinking about not blinking so much, they're going to blink a ton more. That's a crazy note to give someone.
I just started blinking and I was like,
of course.
Yeah.
Don't think about the elephant. I mean,
right.
Bang.
Right, yeah. What do you think about the move to self-tapes? Do you think it benefits the actor?
I think it benefits the actor a ton because you can control it. What were the mistakes that used to happen? You'd be kept waiting in an audition room and get anxious. The casting director sometimes did not read well and really pulls your performance down. Someone was in a bad mood and you could feel that when you walk in. Well, now, no traffic, no anxiety. You can select the best tape. But my favorite quote is by a speaker named Iyanla Vanzant. The way you do one thing is the way you do everything. And so much is revealed by, do you have a professional setup? You don't have to spend a fortune to that, but there's got to be a backdrop, lighting, good sound, and you have to have a good reader. We love Mom, Dad, and the family dog, but you can control that. And the reader must be live. They can't be you on tape They can be online as long as we hear them well, but they have to be live with you. So it says so much by the way you produce a self-tape. And casting offices get so many submissions, they look for reasons not to have to watch. You don't want to give them a reason not to have to watch. And the first reason is tech production. So if you can send your best tape where you didn't blow the line, where you didn't blank, where you didn't fall out, send that. If you send a bad version, that the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. Who's going to want to hire you?
When I first started doing self-tapes, it would take me, like, I feel like almost hours to do, because I would like do it and like, oh no, I'm gonna do it again. Oh no, I'm gonna do it again. You know, I would just do like take after take after take after take. And now I'm kind of learning, if I don't get it in 3 takes, then something's wrong. Go back and like kind of go back to the beginning.
Totally agree. But better to have that. I would rather have people who care too much than people who care too little. Because you're telling your own story here, people who care too much can learn to lighten up. People who care too little, that's a character flaw. And they should go away and not do this. Because that's where the insecurity comes in. See, that's what drives you. Now you've learned to balance it. But you realize without that, 1 take, that's good enough. I'll send that. Without the insecurity, you don't examine your work. Every single day, I look at my own work and think, could I do better? Can I say that in a clearer way? Am I on the right track here? If you don't have that habit, then you don't prepare correctly.
I want to ask you some like acting questions from your standpoint. What's some of the things you've noticed over the years that you see actors do where they just stopped or did something, just a pivot differently, it would make a huge difference in their work? Like, is there any sort of one common thing?
Yes, the biggest acting mistake is judging the character, is playing an idea, is seeing the character as someone other than you. An actor has to first own themselves from light to dark, to know that every character you're going to play is already inside you. It's not about playing your idea of the character. So if you judge the character, and breakdowns are filled with judgment. So when you read the character breakdown and it says arrogant, narcissist, then the actor tries to play that, and no one sees themselves as the villain. Everyone sees themselves as the hero of their own story. So I say to my students, if I describe the character you're going to play as a drug dealer, a murderer, in fact, dissolves people in vats of acid, and then I go on, I say, most of you would judge that character, but Bryan Cranston didn't in Breaking Bad. That's what makes it genius acting. Anyone can judge a character. Your job is to justify the actions of the character and see where they live inside you. So that's one of the most common mistakes. And the other is what I would call why versus how. If you supply the why, the how takes care of itself. But so much training, and a lot of bad training, is all about how. These are the greatest hits of general acting notes: levels, colors, transitions, arc, pace, strong choices. Anybody can say them. You have to connect yourself and make the character, make the words come from you, so we don't see the acting. But if you diagram the scene in advance and write out all of your actions in advance and plan it all out, that's akin to paint by numbers. And no one ever created a masterpiece working paint by numbers. The goal of technique is spontaneous life. The goal of technique is not technique.
I was talking to a casting director a while back, and she said, if when she watches the self tape, if you don't do something to catch her in the first like 15 to 30 seconds, she's on to another one. Do you find
that's called be good? That's what will catch her. But see, that thinking leads the actor to go, okay, I've got to do something unusual. One poor girl with the reporter scene, she had this stain on her sweatshirt, and it kept growing and growing. And it was the oddest thing I've ever seen. What did you do? She had rigged water to strike her because she had decided that the character's sweating. But that thinking leads to, how do I stand out? You know how you stand out? be good. We spend entirely too much time trying to figure out how to sell and market ourselves. And when you do that, you destroy your talent. I moved to LA in 1985. Uta Hagen did not understand what I was doing in LA. How could you go there? But in any case, to me, scene study class in person, scenes from plays. On Zoom, I'm teaching television and film. We're doing scenes from TV and film. But craft, you have to learn doing a play. And scenes from plays, the dialogue is richer. It doesn't rely on editing, so forth. So I believe scene study has to be taught with scenes from plays. Well, was that a great marketing strategy for LA? Well, it turned out to be. Why? Because it's what I believe. And you have to be willing to have some people say, I don't want that. But enough of people will be drawn to you. So if we are not our authentic selves, if we're trying to figure out what they want, we are what they want. They just don't know it yet. One student of mine got the guest lead on an NCIS, and it said in the stage direction, crying, sobbing uncontrollably. And he said to me, I'm not going to do that. And I said, you sure or not? Because it made no sense. Anyway, he booked it. On set, the producer said, oh God, your tape was the only one not pushing for emotion. And he said, you wrote that into the stage direction. Did we? Is that why everybody was doing that? We hated it.
I just have a couple more questions. So when an actor first gets a script, what should they do? Maybe what is the first thing they shouldn't do is the right question.
They shouldn't plan a performance. First, read it for information and read it carefully. Anything you miss in that reading, you're going to miss something actable. And too often they're getting ready to perform before they've even seen what's there. So you have to know how to read a script, and you have to know what a writer gave you. One of the best things I recommend everybody, write a 2 to 3 page scene. Don't submit it anywhere, don't film it, don't have to do anything, don't have to show it to anyone, but write a 2 to 3 page scene. You will agonize over time, place, relationship, circumstance, only for an actor to come along and figure out why none of that matters. So you want to get better at script analysis, write a 2 to 3 page scene. You're going to see that there's nothing in that scene by accident.
And my final question, I could talk to you all day, but my final question is, I like to ask actors, like, what's their craziest audition, or, casting directors, what's the craziest thing that's happened in the room? For you, because you've been doing this for so long, what is one of the craziest or strangest things that's happened to you, when you've been coaching, or, in one of your classes?
It's an ongoing story, Lance. You see so many. I think I've given a few of the examples of some of the things that I've seen. What makes me sad, and I'm thinking of something that happened years ago. This person had moved across country, sold everything, moved wife and children to be an actor. And he did his first scene, and it was really very weak. And I'm not cruel, but I'm honest. So I think the acting teachers tend to come in extremes, those who are trying to kill you and the cheerleader. And I try to be right in the middle of that, fair, honest, but accurate. And I gave him the notes that he needed to hear. And he said, but I'm counting on this. I moved across country. I sold everything. And I didn't say this because it would have been mean, but what I wanted to say is, based on what? Have you ever auditioned for strangers who do not know you and been the one picked? I don't care if that's community theater, a student film. I don't understand why some people base a career decision on the air, on thin air, on deciding I'm going to do that. Yes, you can improve. Yes, you can train. But have you gotten any feedback that's told you might be on the right path, that this might be right for you? So that continues to be the actual ongoing strangest thing, is I think, have you ever auditioned for anything, and been chosen? What would point you in this direction?
Wow, I think I feel like I've come across people like that quite a bit. You know, they just want to, they think they can, I think they just watch so much television and think, oh, I can do that, you know, and
it's because great acting looks effortless, but isn't. The Olympics are coming up. We don't watch the Olympics thinking we can do any of those events. They look hard, but you can't see the technique when an actor's working well. And so everyone thinks they can do it until they try, and then they realize not so easy.
Right, right. Well, Howard, thank you so much for taking time. This has been like enlightening for me. Every answer was like pure gold for me. It was terrific. Yeah, and I can't wait to pick up the new version of your book. You know, anytime you want to chat, I would love to.
Anytime, yeah. Pick a topic, and I'm in. That was really an enjoyable conversation on my end too, Lance.
Well, thank you very much, and hopefully I'll talk to you again soon.
I hope so. Thank you.
Thanks.